beautifuls. You're listening to Bliss and Grit. I'm Brooke Thomas, and I'll be joined soon by my dear friend and co-host, Vanessa Scotto. On the show, we're talking about being on the embodied spiritual path, and what does that actually mean? So what's the real evolution of our lives? How do we ultimately embrace everything, the beauty and the crazy, the joys and the messes, the bliss and the grit that is a human life? And we are just a couple of regular old humans having conversation and sharing our personal experiences as we follow our own paths, as opposed to being experts and, God forbid, certainly not gurus. Okay. In today's episode, we are talking about what actually loving what arises looks like in practice. So we've really all heard the trite spiritual phrases like meet whatever arises with acceptance and love everything in your experience, or even do not judge yourself or others. And as trite as they can seem, because we hear them so frequently, genuinely landing in the deep, granular practice that these phrases point to is not the most straightforward thing in the world. So certainly, I would say it's super duper foreign to everyone living in this time and place. And in this conversation, Vanessa and I are having a highly unprocessed talk about how that's showing up for each of us as a lived experience right now. How are we seeing the million tiny no's that we say to ourselves all the time and that we notice everyone saying to themselves and also to the world? And what does saying yes to what we find really look like? What's the difference between tolerance and really loving things? If you're enjoying the show, we would be delighted if you could leave a review for us on iTunes or on our Facebook page, which is Bliss and Grit. You can also head over to Bliss and Grit and subscribe to get our new, we've only been doing it for a couple of weeks, it's a short list of curated talks and books and things we're giggling over that we send out every Friday. One last thing before we head into the conversation, we have potty mouths, so if you're at work or if you're with the kids, you might want to wear headphones. Okay. Here we go.
Hello, my love.
Hello, beautiful. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be talking to you.
I'm glad to be talking to you too. Always.
I mean, does everybody realize this is sort of like a therapy session for,
for both of us, reciprocally? Yes.
So happy to be going through therapy with you today. No, but for real, this one might wind up being sort of like a therapy session. I don't know. Let's just see what evolves.
We'll see.
Who can say? So what's on our minds is to talk about how to really love what arises. Mm-hmm. And so this morning, Brooke and I start texting. We actually start texting because I'm listening to a Matt Kahn talk, and you have to listen to this. And then Brooke's got another idea, and it always evolves into the what are we going to talk about today conversation. Like you can see how well organized we are, quote unquote, because it's
we're
usually
in
like
flow. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
It is true, but it doesn't look so systematic to people maybe from the outside.
Super not systematic.
So like 3 hours before we'll be like, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, well, the only thing I can think to talk about today is this weird meditation I had where I was holding my dying body. So there you have it. That's what we're going to talk about, folks.
Hooray. Yeah, we actually spent 30 minutes trying to convince ourselves to talk about something that seemed a little more linear. And then we were like, nope.
Nope. Turns out this really super messy thing that's completely unprocessed and unanalyzed is what we're going to talk about. So y'all heard it here first, even before Kieran or even before I've made any sense out of it. Okay. Well, here was really what was happening. I was going on this beautiful morning walk today, and I was listening to a talk by Matt Kahn on the Sounds True podcast, the producer's pick, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. And if y'all don't know the Sounds True producer's pick podcast, it might be worth you getting to know. So I'm listening to his talk. Now, this is only the second time I've ever listened to Matt Kahn. The first time being the episode we referred to, the talk we referred to on the body a couple weeks back. Now this is the second time. And I really don't even know that much about him, although I just immediately downloaded his audiobook. So I'm beginning to get to know something about him. But there's something about the way he's transmitting information that is like spontaneously revelatory. And I'm speaking for you too, right, Brooke?
Yes. And relieving. I think when we were having our text fest of resources today, it's like, there's something about him. Like he's super quirky, right? But like, I just feel so profoundly relieved when I listen to him.
Yeah, I really, he said something in his talk like, in his book. I don't think you heard it yet. It was just the beginning of the book I was listening to, like, because he is, and this I'm going to put a little words in his mouth, but because he is like an energy worker and a channel, and he worked on all of those levels, that when you hear him, it is a transmission. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, sounds so hokey. But meanwhile, I'm like leaving his talks like, whoa, profound insight. Mm-hmm. So he's talking about how the ego gets structured ultimately, and that it's this structuring that happens at the level of the nervous system as the nervous system gets overwhelmed. And y'all just have to listen because it was so deep and interesting and juicy. But he was even talking about how you can take on the unprocessed material of your family, right? Like what's happening on their nervous system level into your nervous system level, which makes sense. But
yeah,
so it's we're patterning. We know that. But somehow the way he was breaking down the ego formation was just really interesting language. And I could just start to feel these things shift and these epiphanies pop. And I was spontaneously moved to meditation, which has not been an easy place for me lately. Like I'm not often spontaneously moved to meditation anymore. And I just laid down on my couch. So I lay down on my couch and I start to do one of Kieran Trace's meditations, alchemy, right? So I'm like following kind of a prescription, right? I'm following her voice and I'm following this. And I'm noticing where I'm like bound in this very, very deep place in my heart, like a knot, like a twisting, right? In a way that I've known I've had scar tissue there because I can see it with imagery, but I don't feel it. So this was interesting to like all of a sudden be feeling it. And I'm feeling the little contortions, that are in just about all of my chakras in different ways. And then all of a sudden her meditation will not work anymore. Stops. Like can't get the app to work.
Like
going.
tech mischief.
And just so y'all know, we're out of Mercury retrograde. So it was not that, in case some of you were thinking it. So I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm just meant to be sitting here. Gotcha. Right? So I'm just sitting there and I get this like really weird image. It's almost, my memory these days is not so sharp and on point. But I get this image, and it is me as an adult, like Vanessa, kind of today, as much as an image can be, dying, like gaunt face, like dying, like how you'd look if you're dying. You don't look good. You don't look well. I'm not gracefully, going in a puff of light. Like it's like I'm dying. And in this vision, in my stillness, I'm holding myself, like wrapped around myself as I'm dying in my own arms, right? And I was just like, It wasn't emotional as in the way we can get emotions like with psychological pain, like as in like grieving, like, oh, it's so sad Vanessa's going through this. It wasn't that, but it was more like poignant or sweet. And I don't know yet what it all means. Like I haven't sat with it for very long. It was this morning. But the gut sense I had, sort of immediately upon reflection was that there's a piece of me, a very wounded piece of me that's been dying for years. for a lifetime. I mean, for most of my lifetime. And not many days ago, I was talking with Brooke on the phone, and I was talking about how there's this reaction that happens in my mind body. If I perceive my parents don't care about my health and put their conceptual needs ahead of my health, that I just feel like dying. Like it's just, oh, it's hopeless. It's worthless, right? It's worthless. I don't think that's the word I mean to use. There's no point. And I'm just, I just want to like die, collapse. So I'm like, okay, here it is, right? Here's this part of me. And I loved it. And that's what I did. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I just held it, and it wasn't a problem. It wasn't a pity, like a part of you to cry for, which I've done so much in my life, which is fine, but poor little Vanessa or, something like that wasn't that. It was so much more clean, like just this experience of touching the profundity of life and just sitting with someone in that intimate space. So got me thinking a lot about what it means to really love yourself. Or if you talk about these spiritual or meditative pathways, when they refer to like meet what arises with acceptance, like love everything, that comes up, all of these different adages or these different teachings, like what does it really mean if we get to like a cellular, granular level? And when I kicked that back to you, Brooke, you were also kind of moodling around with that. So how's that for a lead-in?
That's a good lead-in. We'll see where we go. Yeah, it's really, it's the truth of what's really up for both you and I, and in different ways, we're getting a lot of whatever epiphany about it. And I just use the word epiphany not to indicate like, and we're geniuses about it now, but more to indicate that there's like this experiential level of it. Because of course, unfortunately, all these phrases are totally trite, like just love yourself and just accept everything and just meet everything that arises. And we've heard them a million times, and they're fine to hear a million times because apparently we need to hear them a million times. And then sometimes, many times, it will also land. And you really do love something that you've spent probably most of your life saying no to or splitting off from. For me, that's what's coming up is like, I just feel like I'm tracking, for whatever reason, awareness is watching. It sounds creepy, but awareness is watching in me, and awareness is watching in the world, the million tiny no's, that like I'm saying no to aspects of myself and my experience all the time. And I always have been. And if anything, I am doing so much less now, but it's almost like the white noise got cleared out enough that I can actually see, I can actually hear now the no's and how much I'm prejudging myself or my experiences. And then I just like, I'm gaining a level of sensitivity where I really feel the no to that in everyone in the world all the time, like just how much we're judging everything. Is it good or bad? Is it safe or not safe? Should I go down this road of this conversation or this choice or this job? I don't want to get too obtuse with like fake examples. For me, like, I'm very much at this place. It's been a really rapid fucking acceleration year of my own, whatever you want to call it. Like the word that I use myself, and I think it's indicative of the no, is healing. The word I have been using is like my healing, right? Which when I say healing, what I mean is, I don't know what I mean. I think when I use the word, what I think I mean is like trauma, but that's not what I mean. Like sometimes that comes up, right? Like experiences from this lifetime that a person would call trauma, but that's not really so much what's on the plate. So it's more about like evolving, right? My evolving process. But what I'll notice is that I have these periods of time, and this summer has been one of them, where there's a lot of time at home, what I call healing. Like I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was like, well, what is, and he was, he gets it. He was in realization process training with us. And so he's like, when you say you're sitting at home healing, like, what does that look like? And I'm like, I don't know. It looks like a lot of meditating time. I can say that. And realization process type stuff, like embodiment work, where you're kind of tracking things in your body, like you were describing that twist in the heart. I'm like, I don't know. But the word healing implies there's something that needs to be healed, right? That I'm going somewhere, that there's some end game process here that's happening. And it's been this really funny thing where it's like, it is a no to myself, because it's like, I had better really do this work, which looks like meditation and realization process and things like that. I had better really put my foot on the gas so that I can really speed up this process. And it's like, well, what is the speeding up? The speeding up is a no to whatever, like a no to not knowing what I consider my identity to be anymore in a certain way, right? Like, obviously I'm not totally losing it. Like, I'm very aware of who I am, but like, or a no to needing to spend a bunch of quiet time at home and not having my quote normal summer, right? Which would involve a lot of more barbecues and beach time. And there's been some of that, but a lot of it has just felt like a no to that. I just need a lot of quiet time. And I was listening to a talk you had sent me. We really do send each other resources back and forth all week. For those of you who are getting the Friday newsletter and think that we're just like making that up, no, we send each other like 3 resources a day. So there was the CIIS Adyashanti talk, which actually I sent out to everyone last week. And he was talking about there is just this sort of primal level thing. It's not about deconditioning your thoughts. It's not about opening your heart. It's not about healing your past. It's not about any of those things that you can kind of get a handle on. It's just that there's this thing in your gut that just says no, and it is your most primal way of orienting to the world. It believes it is what is keeping you alive. Like, it's your primal wiring, right? And you can't put your foot on the gas like I've been telling myself I can. You can't just hurry it along and be like, here's the part where you resolve, and what, like whatever weird, vague ideas I have about what happens on the other side of resolving, which would basically just be like, many things, normal person, or I don't know, not feeling this gut feeling anymore. And he's like, it just, when you have a different orientation to it, which is basically just loving it, just like, oh, hi, I see you and I love you. At a certain point, whenever the fuck it's ready, it'll just let go. It'll just unclench. And he was giving the description of like a fist, and he was like, not to use overdramatic language. I'm paraphrasing Adyashanti. He said not to use overdramatic language, but if I'm making a clench with my fist, and if I open my hand, in a certain way, my fist has been annihilated. It no longer exists. Now, if that fist is all of your wiring that believes it's what keeps you alive, that feels like a really big deal, when in reality, it's just the difference between an open hand and a clenched fist. And so it's just a different way of relating to things. And now I'm rambling, but it was just this epiphany of how that is this like really primal gut level of no to me, and when will it go away, and how can I speed it up, as opposed to just like, oh, hi, I see you. And like that beautiful description you give of what you saw in your meditation, just like loving it. Actually, Kieran said to me recently, like this process is like your baby. Like, you love it like your baby, your beloved baby. And I can hear that information, and I can hear it from Adyashanti, and I can hear it from Matt Kahn. But it's amazing how much our wiring or our orientation to the world just keeps hijacking us and turning it into a yes to this part, no to that part. And in the future down the road, I'll be a better, shinier version of myself once I get rid of this thing that I'm saying no to. It's fascinating.
It's frustratingly, mind-blowingly present. Okay, so recently I had a health relapse. And as I was tracking back to see, okay, what's been happening with my health, right? Okay, I have to bring the awareness to this whole experience. And I'm observing that at some point, unknown date over the summer, my intentionality switched from supporting my body in a health and healing process. And I mean healing in this case because I was talking physical, although part of my physical healing has to do with my psychological and spiritual healing. But it switched from that to living a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like you were saying, it's summertime.
Right. It's summertime, bitches. I should be in a kayak. I should be
I'm supposed to have
grilling something with friends.
Non-inflammatory muffin top belly, not supposed to be there. My inflammatory muffin top belly, supposed to be non. I am, supposed to be able to have wine if I want once a week. I mean, once a week, like I'm not even, but I'm supposed to be able to if I want, and I'm supposed to be able to stay out till midnight if I want. And like all of these things sort of, it shifted so quietly, like without me even tracking it, because that's how these things work.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, to what end, right? Like my body's been telling me, hey, for whatever reason, that is many reasons that I'm still, self-exploring, you need to pump the brakes and go inside, right? Like that's the clear message from direct reality. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so that's great. I did it for 5-6 months. A+ for me, now normal.
Right. Now let's do the thing that I want. No to you. No to that input.
To you.
Yeah.
No to this stupid process. Like I'm over this, And the funny thing is, and I don't know, this doesn't even reflect the language I want for love, but nevertheless, like what's true is what we've said before is like reality always wins. So what are you doing? Right? Like, what am I going to outbeat my body? Like, no, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Like reality is going to win. So it's sadly hilarious the way we kick and scream about moving away from direct experience, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're in a presence of, let's say, a lover or a want to be lover, and your gut saying, I don't think this person wants what I want, but I don't want to ask them because boy, is this fantasy feel so right. Well, you can resist your knowing, your intuition. Mm-hmm. It will win in the end.
In the end, you'll go, I knew it on the first date.
Why? Why did I not listen to myself? And it's so much worse because you realize like on some level, it's experienced as an I betray myself, right? Like when we put ourselves in circumstances that are not for our actual highest well-being, then we experience it as I betrayed myself, which is, just something to be
loved.
It's
a little extra cherry on top.
Yeah, but just more to love. And I was telling Brooke, and I'm going to butcher this, so don't quote this, and please go read or listen to Matt Kahn's book if you have an interest in this. But
we'll put all this in the show notes because we're mentioning a lot of resources today. So if you're like, where the hell am I going to go to the website? It'll be in the show notes.
Buy it. You can buy it. Just go for it. So he was saying something like a mantra that he thought was a very healing mantra. And he gives, by the way, just, very, very long mantras. Like they're like
repeat after me mantras.
Yeah, like repeat after me, a paragraph. And it goes something like, when you're frustrated, you deserve more love, not less. When you're saddened, more love, not less. When you're angry, you deserve more love, not less. And he goes on and on. When you're proud, you deserve more love, not less. And being with direct experience is continually amazing because it's hard to fathom that that's mind blowing.
I know.
It's hard to fathom.
I'm like, people are going to listen to this and they're going to be like, yeah. But then there's the landing in like, oh my God.
Yeah, like, oh my God. Okay, no, that is not what I do. That's not what I do. I give myself the most love I can give when I'm doing something I perceive as pleasing.
A plus plus. Now you deserve love. Yeah.
Yes, like I'm eating the way I feel I should for the health and benefit of my body. I'm looking kind of on point. I'm being kind to people. I'm happy. I get a lot of plus points if I'm happy, right? Like as long as I'm sort of in a good, buoyant mood and like seeing the bright side of things and cracking jokes, I get like pretty good points with myself. But when I'm sick, you know, we've spoken about this on the podcast before, or when I'm not being a quote unquote good person, you know, or angry, like in all of these states, like that's when I'm most prone to withholding love. And I may even say, okay, let me meet that part of myself. But it is like right underneath that sentiment is meet that part of myself because it's sucky and let's just
and I
sit
can
with the sucky
tolerate
part.
it. Yeah.
Right. Tolerate the fear.
Tolerate it. I'll sit with it. And it's like sitting in the muck. Like even when I was talking with my friend and and it was such a great question, like, well, what do you mean healing? Like, what does that look like? And I was like, why do I use that word? And it's like, I decided that it must be in order to turn towards myself with what feels like the kind of nourishment I need, which right now is a lot of time with the silence, a lot of time meditation. I have to problematize it. Like it's allowed if there's something wrong, like I'm healing from trauma or whatever. It's like, that's not the case. Like, but I can't conceptually grasp that. So I have to make a problem out of just doing what I'm moved to do, which is meditate. But it is fascinating how we like everything has to be is it allowed? You know, is it a problem? Is it a good thing? I have the little Suzanne Siegel quote. I feel like it'll actually work here.
Okay, while you're pulling that, it seems also, correct me if I'm wrong, like it's like a movement of dualism, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And when you can actually see it,
there has to be some happening.
Right, like some reason why I'm laboring. And it's not a labor. But it's like my mind keeps trying to hold on to or give reasons like, what are you doing? I don't know. We'll call it healing. Well, why would you need to heal? Because there's something wrong. And it's like, I just want to sit in my house with the silence. I don't know why. It's a mystery. But how does that relate to what you were just saying? Because there was a thread that I wanted to tie back where you were talking about more like that we love ourselves less.
Yeah.
When we see it's related to that in some way that I can't cleanly tie together. We forgot to announce in the beginning that this was definitely going to be a brain fart episode because both of us are like trying to communicate things that are highly experiential and also very much unprocessed and just kind of free flowing. Okay. On that note, I'm going to ground it a little bit with somebody else's brain, which is Suzanne Siegel. She wrote a book, Collision with the Infinite, which was very helpful for me and maybe will be for some other people. Maybe not. I don't know. She was a person who had a radical awakening experience, but she also happened to be a psychologist. So she's talking about how her sessions go as a therapist. And she says, I begin with everyone by asking them to tell me who they take themselves to be. And this generally involves an in-depth exploration of all the ideas they have acquired from other people and have taken to be statements of truth about who they are. From early on, we're given a clear picture by our culture of the right somebody we're supposed to become. And most of us wholeheartedly undertake the enormous task of becoming that somebody. And what you're describing is just how deep the wiring goes of I'm the right somebody when I am cheerful. I am the right somebody when I am doing the hard work of healing a problem, which is actually not what I'm doing, but it's like, I'm the right somebody. And so it's always the yes to that, the right somebody, which I totally inferred from the way I was treated as a young child and and all the way back, right? The way my parents were inferred who they were from the people who came before. And then no to anything that doesn't fit that. And of course, that's so much of the range of our human experience. Whether it's, I just want to be with the quiet a lot this summer, or I'm angry today, or, and so of course it completely cuts off any kind of supply of genuine love for the full range of who and what we are, because we're just so busy, completely unconsciously, saying no to that, no to that, no to that. And there's like this little moment where you're genuinely cheerful at breakfast and you're like,
and that's a big thumbs up.
Yes, did it.
That feels good. And you are good. And what an awakened woman you must be. You're in a good mood 5 days
job.
in a row. Even though you're sick, you stay in such a good mood. Double thumbs up.
Double excellent. Good job. You're really keeping that identity going that you were told you are supposed to be.
I'm fucking rocking it. And as you were speaking, we touched on this a couple of minutes back, but I was thinking about the difference between tolerating and loving.
Yeah, it's a wide space between those two, but we don't treat it like that.
Yeah, it's a completely different experiential space, right? So everyone can take a moment and feel in their body when they're tolerating something that they want to be different, but they're just finding tolerance for it, versus when you're open arm loving something.
Thinking about it with other people helps. Like if you think about that person, which is oftentimes a family member, who you're like, well, I'll tolerate. Or if you're going out with a group of friends and there's that one person that got invited and you're going to tolerate them because they make you crazy because of whatever. And you decide in advance you'll tolerate it. Like it's such a yucky feeling as opposed to the feeling of being with your friend who you're most yourself with, or with your partner. If you have a really delicious connection to your partner, which not everyone does, but if you have that, that's love. That's like, yes.
That's open. And it's really, really different. Now, I'll talk for myself, applauded myself when I can get to tolerance, because it was this major developmental kind of leap to go from hard no, right? Hard no to having feelings, hard no to sensations, hard no to vulnerability, hard no to anger. I had a lot of just hard no to tolerance, which is I will let you exist, right? That's what tolerance feels like to me. Like, okay, anger, you can exist. I see you. I'm not even going to go to war with you. Great. And then the next level is, oh, anger, come here. Oh, anger, baby, come on, I love
it.
Right? And that is experientially completely different. And I don't think until this morning, I realized how often when I'm meeting things in myself, because I do meet it, and it's not consistent. I'll talk out my little caveats, but how often it's a tolerance. It's a tolerance for my fear. It's a tolerance for my anger. Where I've been better at being actually loving is when I can imagine that wound as myself as a child. And I have developed the capacity to be quite loving with my inner child, which I did not always have. I used to hate her, and I am legitimately not exaggerating. I hated her. And now I can see myself as an inner child, and I can rub her head and braid her hair and really love her. But except for those moments where I'm using the power of sort of my imagination to fuel something, most of the time when I'm meeting my experience, it's closer to tolerance than to love.
Yeah, for me too. I think that the love is one of those things that ripens. And what's funny is like when it actually emerges, it's always, again, this is another one of those Godoy, but it is so much softer. Like if I'm talking about this kind of vague thing, right? This desire to be with the silence a lot. And of course, I can wake up and conceptually have the idea that I described already. Like, I would like to be a normal person today. Normal person looks like getting together with all my friends and laughing and gossiping and complaining and all those things that you just do with your friends. Like totally normal human, being able to answer the question, what are you up to? And like just to list projects or complain about the weather. I don't know. Like I'm always like, I don't know. It's just, anyway, I'm in a weird fucking place right now. So like, what do you explain? I just feel compelled to meditate all the time. I don't say that to people because it's this weird answer. So anyway, I have this desire to be the normal person, right? And then once I see the desire, like, wouldn't it be great if that wasn't there today and I could just like go gossip with friends? Like, I'm not gossipy and I don't have friends who are super gossipy, but all that normal stuff you do where you're like, oh, my kid was home with a fever for 3 days and I couldn't believe it. And I had to go to the grocery store. And so tolerating it is like, yeah, I know, but I don't. But I have to still, okay, you're still there. You're meaning this thing that wants to have a lot of time with the silence. Okay. And it's like, I guess I have to listen to that because I know I can't. I've tried.
Experience
right.
wins.
Exactly. I've tried. And I have, trust me, tried plenty of times to be like, I'm going to be a normal person today. It doesn't work. It falls flat. It's like, nope, just want to go home and meditate. I'm just making myself sound like a fucking basket case, which is why I don't answer that question to everyone. I just want to be meditating all the time. But when I can instead notice the desire to be the normal person and notice the desire to be sitting home with silence. And like something in that talk that I listened to today by Adyashanti, it just helped so much. Like you can't force it along. You can't wrestle with it. You can't bully it. You can't speed it up. It's literally just like, oh, hi. It's just this very simple, like, okay, hi. And it doesn't even have to be this like rapturous love affair. It's just, but there's sweetness because it's like a very different orientation. And that is so soft and so easy and so accessible, except that it's so completely foreign to the way that I relate to myself. So it's only the foreignness that makes it surprising or maybe challenging to access. But it's funny, whatever reason, you and I are getting a lot of this week. Like, how do I genuinely access loving all of the things? Loving all of the things that arise, loving all of the parts of myself.
There's such a level of intimacy with it, I guess. Like even in my image that I was getting where I was holding this part of myself, this dying part of myself with tenderness. It's like, well, imagine doing that with, your friends or your coworkers if they were suffering, or it's like so intimate. And some people are so good at intimacy. But for many people, myself certainly, there's been some wounding around that level of tenderness, right? And of course, I don't know. It was a really big leap. It's a really big leap to shift from even warmth to love. Like warmth, okay, so tolerance is, all right, you get to be here, you get to exist. This is how I'm using these words. This is not to define it for you guys, but just so you get my experience. Tolerance is you get to exist. I'm not going to interrupt you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to breathe, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to regulate and you exist. And then there's warmth, which, Karen will sometimes use the word warmth. If you all try like her alchemy meditation or something, Karen will talk about warmth, like you could bring warmth to it. And warmth, for me, not for Karen, but for me, when I think of warmth, I think of, okay, you get to exist and I'm even going to have a warm feeling for you, but I may not really be that into you or super welcoming. It's just you happen to be here and I'm going to have some warmth to you, right? Because, now that I see you, but like love is like, I can't wait to meet you.
Yes. Yep.
Right. And that's totally different. I did this ritual once with a West African teacher. Her name was Sabamfu Some. She's passed already. But it was this beautiful ritual. It was from the Dagara tribe in Africa. And she basically set up stations for each of the elements. And you would go through water and cleanse yourself and fire. And, there was a process to go through. And as you came to the end, like you completed your ritual and everyone was going through as a group, she had the people who were left standing there. She said, when this woman comes out of her ritual, you will greet her like she is the best thing that ever happened in the world, jumping up and down, clapping. She said in Africa, where I'm from, like if a mother travels for the day and she comes home, the kids run to her, the arms are open, right? There's this like joyful meeting. And so we went through this ritual, and as these things do, you're crying and meeting pain and, but you come through the other side, and it's something I've never really seen. I mean, of course, I've seen people's faces get happy when they see me, but to see 20 people or something jumping with delight at this emergence of you. And in that moment, it's an emergence of such a raw you, because you did go through this experience, this emotional opening as you were in the rituals, was profound, right? Super memorable. And that's love. I have a friend in San Francisco. I love her to pieces. She's still one of my closest friends, Maya. And I remember we just started to become friends at grad school before we took a break, like a 3-week break or something. So we were just getting close. And then I didn't see her at all. And then we came back and she was in my class. And when she showed up in class, I did this thing where I jumped up and down and I clapped and smiled. And then I realized, oh my God, play it cool. You revealed yourself, because Maya in her infinite snarkiness goes, oh my. And I'm like, oh no, you've shown
cool.
I know. Don't love so much. And that's what I got this morning as I was listening to the talk, and things were just kind of rejiggering in my nervous system, was that's love. And it's so beyond words. That's why words feel trite when we say that. It's so beyond words, because you have to get those experiential nuances, for everyone's self, use whatever word you want, but tolerance feels like, meeting it feels like, making space for it feels like, loving feels like. And wow, that was where the secret sauce was. And it's you were saying that people are walking around with giant no's. No, all the time.
Yeah, no
right?
to this and no, and always evaluating. Should I say no? Will I have to say no? How do I feel about this no? To our inner selves, and then also to our outer circumstances all the time. And I don't even mean things like, what plans do I want to make today? It's much more subtle.
And Matt was saying, in Matt's perspective, as he was sharing in the talk we're referencing, it was really the only way to shift and open and awaken is it's a big, wholehearted, joyful yes. It's an open and receptive, which is very different than the stance of tolerance that can be, just keep your distance, but I'm going to let you exist.
Yeah. And I feel the, just to throw a whole world religion under the bus, I feel one of the ways that Buddhism has gotten distorted is that it can be taken as a lot of tolerance, really. How can I kind of melt into tolerating, kind of just soften around all this suffering and just let it kind of be there and be cool with it. I don't think that's what's intended by any major world religion, which are all just trying to point at the same thing. But I feel like there's this way, right? You know, that it can just be like, how can I just see everything that's there and just tolerate it? But we don't have a lot of cultural models for like that kind of, that beautiful image you painted of the joyful, yes, the loving greeting, the like arms flung open love kind of thing.
Like, this is life itself. I mean, I think that image you were referencing with Buddhism is because that's what we're able to have taken from it at first, right? Like
right, because we see everything through our filters. And so we decide,
right.
Oh, that must be what it is trying to convey.
And I can take that. And,
how can I tolerate it?
Many seekers, many of us, many of you listening, us included, can get to that point where we can start to tolerate and breathe and regulate, right? And then if we're lucky, we can get to a little bit of warmth. Right. And a little bit of compassion. And then there's love. And then there's you are life. Like you are so precious, so dear. And it's probably why Kieran keeps referencing a baby because it's something that's like a touchstone for us to acknowledge, especially you as a mother, but most of us can picture it. But it's a touchstone for you to remember the kind of feeling that's being referenced, which is a deep and joyful love for the preciousness of this.
And right before we talked, so it must be something I'm supposed to mention, and also just to make sure that we have 40 million resources to add to this episode, I was re-looking at John Prendergast's book, In Touch, which is so fucking gorgeous, you guys, so you should definitely all read it. But when we talk about this, I think one of the other ways that we can go is that we're like, oh, it feels exciting. And because we can all be like adrenaline junkies and excitement junkies. I'm trying to see if I'm flipping through his book, if I can actually find where he talks about how it's the difference between excitement. No, I can't find it. Anyway, I'll put it in the resources. But basically he was saying excitement has this quality of big energy and like you need to pull something towards and maybe push other things away. It has this like grab, yes, yay,
yes,
kind of quality.
Excited, I want to like put it in my mouth. Like I'm
right. Yes. Like grab it, have it,
eat it, devour it.
Totally. And he was talking about this kind of love, you know, and embodiment that we're describing here. It doesn't need to grab and eat anything. And so I just want to make that differentiation because, of course, what our thinking selves, our separate selves do is they're like, oh, it goes like this. It involves me being super excited and jumping up and down and being like the manic one. So then it's like, oh, okay, I'll fold this identity into the mix, which is the like crazy, excited, so in love person. And there's nothing wrong with excitement, but what we're trying to describe is more of a, well, if we were talking about the sort of existential no, like fist clench, we're talking about the open hand. Yes, like yes to this. Hello, like yes. I mean, when you think about when I was describing it being like my baby, you don't jump up and down and go, I love you, baby. I love you so much. You're so good. I'm just going to get your face. Like maybe you do that for 2 seconds with your friend's baby, the first or second or third time you meet the baby and you just want to chew on their cheeks. But if you're the parent of a baby, that love is just there. And it's through all different kinds of experiences. You know, the baby shitting all over you, the baby crying at 2 a.m. and then again at 2:30 a.m. and then at 3 a.m., you know, like, and it's also there for the cooing and the, you know, how soft their cheek feels. It's just there. It's like this whole much more open ground than being predicated on like so excited and I want to grab it and have it.
Yeah. And if the love is unfiltered, right? Unconditioned. And I don't mean unconditional love in the way we can load that word up, but without conditions on it. If the love is there like that, you'll not make the baby good or bad or categorizing. They're just miracles.
Right.
Like,
They're
whoa,
just...
look at this thing.
Yeah.
Look how it does that thing with its mouth and like how it's angry now. That's crazy. And they're just these like miraculous, mysterious expressions of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of angle. And I think it's good what you said, and I want to add to it now that you've said it, made me think of when we interviewed Kieran, and I was talking about feeling relief, you know, like when you're onto something true, that it can have this sense of relief. And she's like, but not even all the time, because once your fear mechanism grabs hold of that,
right,
it knows how to produce relief in order to keep the game going, right? Keep itself safe. And I guess the important thing is to say what you were getting at earlier as you were referencing Adyashanti, which is these things can't be fabricated and they can't be rushed. So having had this whole long talk, the moral of the story is you can't just meet yourself with love.
Right.
So why are we even talking about it? Nobody knows.
Because it's what's up. Yeah, I know.
It's what's up, not you guys.
Keeps filtering through lately.
Yes, but also because these things sit like little gems sometimes, you know, like little seeds, and you never know when it'll ripen, or you never know when an epiphany will come. And you never know when understanding that interesting discernment between, that's just tolerance. Like, well, what stands between me and love? And just having it as a real open question. You just don't know where that will lead, but you can't force it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess all we can do is have respect for this whole process, and why it can be so hard for us just to meet everything in life as precious and sacred, because certainly we have small glimpses of it.
Yeah. And like, can we let it have in some ways, that's the most loving thing of all. Can we let it have its own process? Can we let it live, you know, in the same way that I let my son live, you know, and of course, like imperfectly, right? Sometimes I want him to hurry up and do his homework or whatever, but he doesn't owe me anything. He doesn't, like, none of the love I give him takes anything from me and empties it into him. Like I have less because I gave some to him. It's just there. It just arises, and it just does itself. Like my love for him does itself. His developing life does itself. My developing life does itself, as opposed to all these control conditions we can put on it. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. The show notes, including any resources we mentioned, and today we mentioned a ton, live at blissandgrit.com. A couple of show announcements. So we're finally using our subscription list to send out each Friday a short list of resources, things that we're watching or listening to, reading, or giggling over on the spiritual path. It's basically a curated list from our constant texts and calls about what is striking us each week. So if you want in on that goodness, you can just go to blissandgrit.com and subscribe. We also now have merch. So we have teas, tanks, mugs, notebooks, stickers, and the like. We have 2 designs right now. One is just our logo, Bliss and Grit, and the other is our favorite mantra, Trust Your Life. You can find those also on our website or via TeePublic if you go there and search us. In other support the show news, you can always write a review on iTunes or Stitcher or on our Facebook page, which is Bliss and Grit. And if technology is just not for you, but you're enjoying the show, well then please tell your friends who are also somatic sensies and might resonate with it. Huge gratitude to those of you who've written reviews already. And here is one from Catherine in Berlin, which rhymes. Dearest Brooke and Vanessa, I feel so much love for you as you keep reminding me through your vibrations that we are all connected. Your show is so special to me because it doesn't pull my triggers of judging and pressuring myself, and that is so wonderful. I'm incredibly grateful that both of you embody the spiritedness to listen to your truth and speak it out loud on the show. Listening to Bliss and Grit gives me the feeling of being at home and being on a journey at the same time, which is my favorite feeling. Recently, every time I listen to it, I find exactly what I needed to hear in my current situation. Thank you so much for that. Thank you all of you for listening, and we'll be back next week.